So, fittingly for Christmas, DC Comics decided to publish a holiday special, a collection of short, villain-centric holiday stories. Naturally, I was immediately intrigued when I heard about this. I was even more intrigued when I discovered just which rogues were chosen. Because in this collection, we don't only get major DC villains, but also some underrated ones. Villains that usually get overlooked. By the way, almost none of the villains on the cover actually appear in the comic. Anyway, in total it's 10 stories, all of them written in pencil by different creators. I will go through these stories in chronological order and give a brief plot synopsis and then briefly tell you my thoughts on the story. So let's get started. First up, we've got the Joker in The Amateur. Of course, the Joker has to be first. So in this one, some random guy, presumably named Steve, decides to pull off a prank in Gotham Square on New Year's Eve. He basically pretends that he's been killed by Joker toxin and displays himself for everyone to see. Naturally, chaos ensues, as everyone thinks there's Joker toxin in the air. And that's exactly what Steve wanted. Chaos. When the Joker finds out about this though, he naturally gets furious. After all, someone is using him and his brand for their own mad mischief. The Joker can't have that. This is a good Joker story where the character is forced to make a rather impossible decision by the end. It's pretty much classic Joker. I can't really praise this story too much though, as it's another Joker story. Another Joker story in the sea of already great Joker stories. Among all of those, this one won't exactly stand out or be too memorable. But that's the thing with the Joker. Moving on. The second story is Toyman in Sleigh Bells Ring. Toyman is one of my favorite villains, so I was pretty excited about this one. The story takes place during the annual winter holiday parade in Metropolis. The Toyman naturally shows up to wreck it. His motivation? The kids in the audience aren't paying attention to the parade. They're busy with their phones and tablets, as kids always are these days. Toyman is sick of it. Kids shouldn't be fiddling with their phones, they should be playing with toys. So Toyman is going to forcibly replace their tech with action figures. And to make sure no one intervenes with the transaction, not even Superman, he's got a squad of robotic Justice Leaguers at his command. Classic Toyman. It's kind of funny though that here he's peddling 90s styled action figures. The very figures he hated back in the 90s, in favor of older classic toys. Time moves on, and I guess these radical 90s toys are now the old classics. This is a pretty good Toyman story. It's your typical Toyman yarn, but that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a great thing. I was not disappointed with this story. The third tale is Sinestro in Bright and Terrible. The holiday themes in this one aren't too obvious, they're more symbolic. In this story, Sinestro visits a planet he once saved when he was a Green Lantern, a planet inhabited by a rather primitive species. Turns out these aliens never forgot Sinestro and his deeds, and have formed an entire religion around him, worshipping him as a god. One of these aliens have taken advantage of this though, and made himself out to be a sort of prophet of Sinestro. It's up to Sinestro to set things right and show the aliens the proper way. I don't know, I didn't really care too much for this one, despite the fact I'm a big Sinestro fan. It's just kinda meh. Not bad, but pretty forgettable in my opinion. Moving on, number 4 is Poison Ivy in Old Lang Ivy. Yet another one that takes place on New Year's Eve. Ivy, the antisocial people hater, has decided to, for once, be social on New Year's Eve and make some human contact. She thus goes to C-List, a bar for loser villains. Not really sure why she picked this particular place to make human contact, but we end up with some nice cameos from lesser known Batrogues, like Orca and the Ten-Eyed Man. Penguin is there too, not because he's a C-lister, but because he isn't allowed to smoke in the Iceberg Lounge anymore. Poor Pengy. I like this story, I mean how could I not? Ivy showing a more human side, and a bar full of forgotten Batman villains, many of which I've done videos for. This is a veritable who's who of forgotten Batman villains. Still, I don't know, I feel the story could have been funnier, because you've got a great setup here. but it never really goes full hilarious like I hoped it would. And the story also implies that men who are insecure with women are all secretly wannabe rapists. So it naturally gets a minus point for that, because that's pretty warped. Still, it's a pretty good Ivy tale and definitely worthwhile for any Ivy fan. And thank God Harley was nowhere to be seen. Number 5 is Eros in Winter's Root. In this one, Eros summons Wonder Woman to a cliff with a single tree on it, and there he provokes her into drawing a sword and fighting him. During the fight, Eros appears to hold back, and it seems like he wants Wonder Woman to strike him. As it's revealed at the end, this he did indeed want. He needed the blood of war, his own blood of war, to water the tree with. The tree is actually a former lover of his, a mortal woman whom he in a fit of rage transformed into a tree. The tree needs his blood of war to survive, and Eros keeps feeding it with it as he regrets what he did to her. Yep, that sure sounded strange. I suppose it is a pretty strange concept, but it reads alright. I guess it's a pretty good Eros story, but I just don't care too much about that character, so I can't bring myself to care too much about this story. If you're an Eros fan though, I'm sure you'll like it. Next up is Black Adam in A Coal in My Stocking. I guess Adam's been naughty. In this one, Black Adam talks to a little girl who whines about Santa Claus never coming to her town and delivering presents. So Black Adam goes and beats the shit out of a wizard or something who kinda looks like Santa. I don't know, I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know who these people are. Are they characters from the Shazam stories? Or do they only appear in this story? I don't know Shazam or Black Adam. I've read very few comics with them, so you'll have to excuse my complete ignorance. I guess it's a cute story though, even though I didn't understand shit. I bet you'll like it if you're a Black Adam fan though. Number 7 is Calendar Man in New Year, New You. Yep, Julian Day, aka the freaking Calendar Man. In the story, Julian is greatly offended by his Arkham doctor. His doctor is a complete douchebag who calls Julian a predictable loser with a stupid gimmick. The doctor is pissed that he's stuck with the Calendar Man when he would much rather treat notorious inmates like the Joker or Two-Face. Basically, he's more interested in fame and a potential lucrative book deal. Julian decides to get revenge for the offense and at the same time prove that he isn't a predictable loser. And he's going to do this during the Arkham New Year's celebration. So, good Calendar Man stories are few and far between. In fact, Calendar Man stories period are few and far between. Therefore, I am happy with whatever scraps we can get. I wouldn't really call the story scraps though. It is actually quite good. Dare I say it? One of the best, maybe even the best Calendar Man story ever told. It was about time we got it. It's one of the better loser villain trying to prove himself stories, because I think he actually quite effectively proved that he isn't a loser. In fact, Calendar Man is very clever and manipulative in this story. Hopefully this story catches on and we get more appearances by Julian soon. I won't hold my breath though. Next story is Cronus in Father Christmas. In the story, David Clinton, aka Cronus the Time Thief, goes back in time to a specific Christmas Eve several years ago. Is he going back in time for a heist? Or to kill someone? Nope, he's going back in time to convince his no-good deadbeat father to leave the bar he hangs out at and go home to his family. Give his son a Christmas present, for once show that he cares about him. Thing is, it's not working. His father isn't doing what he's told. So Cronus is forced to return to this Christmas Eve over and over and try to find a way to sway his dad. If only his dad had loved him as a child, he'd never become a criminal in the first place. So essentially what Cronus is trying to do here is erase his entire career as a supervillain. A very touching story, and frankly, probably the best one in the bunch. I'm not the only one who feels that way, I've noticed. This seems to be most people's favorite. It definitely does belong among the greatest Cronus stories of all time. Which reminds me, I probably should make a top 5 Cronus stories video at some time. Anyway, moving on to the next story, which is the Prankster in A Prankster New Year. In this story, the good old pre-New 52 Prankster is back, the distraction for hire. The story is basically just about Prankster and his team of hench girls celebrating New Year's Eve. They do this by pulling a bunch of pranks on each other, what else? Prankster himself pulls the biggest prank, of course, when he tricks the girls into thinking the heroes have discovered their base. Oh Pranky, you old dog you. It's an okay story, nothing really special. It is nice to see the old Prankster back though, after that weird New 52 mess. So yeah, I'm definitely not complaining about this story. And now for the final tale, it's Harley Quinn in Little Christmas Tree. In this one, Renee Montoya releases Harley Quinn from custody, as she's been arrested for a crime she didn't commit, apparently. In fact, Montoya stayed overtime to process Harley, as otherwise she would have been stuck in a holding cell over the weekend. For doing her this favor, Harley decides to pay Montoya back. When she notices that Montoya appears to be down in the dumps, she thus makes it her mission to show the detective some good holiday spirits. And yeah, that's it. Harley Quinn spreading the holiday cheers. I guess that's pretty typical of her. This was probably my least favorite. It could be because I'm so done with Harley Quinn. I can't even stand her anymore. I also don't really know what's going on with Harley here, as I haven't been keeping up with modern comics. Since when does she get arrested for a crime she didn't commit? And shouldn't they hold her anyway? Hasn't she committed other crimes? Is she even a villain any longer? I don't know what's up with her anymore, and frankly I don't care. So there you have it, DC's New Year's Evil. This year's DC Holiday Special. All about the villains. If you love DC villains, this is a no-brainer. You should really read it. You of course don't have to read them all, just pick the stories that feature the rogues you like. Most of these stories are good too, and the selection of villains is also good. A lot of classic DC villains, and a nice mix of major and minor ones. Like I said, the Cronus story is my favorite. My second favorite is the Calendar Man story, and my third is probably the Toyman story. And on behalf of me and the rogues, have a Merry Christmas. And as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.